The text message appeared on my screen at 11:47 p.m., and my hand froze mid-reach for my coffee mug. Mom's name glowed against the darkness of my apartment, the first time I'd seen it in 7 months. My chest tightened as I read the words that would change everything. Maya, we need to talk about money. It's urgent. Call me tomorrow. No apology. No explanation for the silence. Just need. I set my phone face down on the kitchen counter, watching the city lights blur through the window. Something inside me shifted, not anger exactly, but clarity. Sharp, cold, undeniable clarity. For 7 months, they'd blocked me from everything. Every call sent to voicemail. Every message left on read before the blue check marks disappeared entirely. I'd been erased from family group chats, excluded from birthdays, removed from the narrative of their lives like I'd never existed at all. And now they needed money. I sat in the quiet of my studio apartment, the one I'd furnished piece by piece after moving out. The silence pressed against my chest, but it felt different now. Not lonely, just empty of their chaos. My phone buzzed again. Then again. Each notification a small earthquake in my carefully rebuilt world. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I thought about the last 7 months. About rebuilding myself from nothing. About the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering what I'd done to deserve the erasure. About the therapy sessions where I'd finally understood the word scapegoat, and why it fit me so perfectly. They'd blocked me without explanation. Now they needed something. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Just calculation. Because what they didn't know was that I'd spent those 7 months preparing for this exact moment. I should introduce myself properly, though I suspect some of you already recognize pieces of your own story in mine. My name is Maya Turner, and I'm 28 years old. If you've ever been the family member who got blamed for everything, the one who was expected to fix everyone else's problems while your own were dismissed, stick around. This story is for you. I grew up in a house where love was conditional and attention was currency I could never quite afford. My older brother, Kyle, was the golden child. My younger sister, Brianna, was the baby who could do no wrong. And me? I was the responsible one. The backup plan. The emotional support human who existed to make their lives easier. For years, I told myself that was just how families worked. Someone had to be the steady one, right? Someone had to be the mediator, the problem solver, the one who swallowed their disappointment so everyone else could shine. I was wrong. The blocking started 7 months ago, right after Kyle's engagement party. I'd committed the unforgivable sin of not being able to contribute $5,000 to his destination wedding fund. $5,000 I didn't have because I'd just used my savings to pay Mom and Dad's property tax bill. Money they desperately needed when the county sent a final notice threatening foreclosure. Kyle called me selfish. Brianna said I was jealous of his happiness. Mom said I'd always been difficult. Dad just shook his head like I was a disappointment he'd learned to expect. Within a week, I was blocked on everything. Phone numbers, social media, family email chains, gone. When I showed up at Sunday dinner, no one answered the door. I could hear them laughing inside. That's when I understood. I wasn't family. I was a function. And functions that stopped performing were disposable. The first month after they blocked me was the hardest. I'd reach for my phone a dozen times a day, muscle memory driving me to check the family group chat that no longer included me. I'd see a funny meme and think Brianna would love this, before remembering she'd blocked my number. I'd pass Mom's favorite bakery and consider buying her those lemon bars she loved, then remember I was dead to them. I cried a lot those first weeks. Not dramatic, movie-style sobbing, but quiet tears that came at random moments. In the grocery store, seeing a mother and daughter laughing together. On the subway, when a text notification made my heart jump before I realized it couldn't be them. At night, staring at the ceiling, wondering what I'd done to deserve being erased. My therapist, Dr. Yolanda Kim, didn't sugarcoat it. "You've been conditioned to believe their treatment of you is normal," she said during our 3rd session after the blocking. But cutting off a family member without explanation, without conversation, without any attempt at resolution? That's abuse, Maya. That's control. The word abuse felt too big for what I was experiencing. Abuse was violence, wasn't it? Screaming and hitting and obvious cruelty. Not just being ignored. Emotional abuse is still abuse, Dr. Kim said gently. And you've been experiencing it your whole life. They've trained you to minimize your own pain. Something cracked open inside me when she said that. A window I didn't know was closed. I started doing something I'd never done before, I Googled family scapegoat and golden child syndrome. The articles that came up read like my biography. Every pattern I'd lived with for 28 years, named and explained. The constant blame shifting. The emotional manipulation. The way they'd always needed me right up until they didn't. I spent hours reading forums where other scapegoats shared their stories. Their families sounded exactly like mine. The same dynamics, different names. And the advice was always the same: document everything. Set boundaries. Prepare for them to return when they need something. They always come back, one commenter wrote. Not because they miss you. Because they need something. I didn't want to believe it. But I started documenting anyway. I created a folder on my laptop titled Evidence and began compiling screenshots. Every message I'd sent that went unanswered. Every attempt to reach out that hit a blocked wall. The last email I'd sent to Dad, begging him to just tell me what I'd done wrong. His response: "You know what you did." I didn't, though. That was the cruelest part. I genuinely didn't know. I also started documenting the financial history. Every time they'd asked for money, I'd sent it. Mom's car repair, $1,200. Kyle's security deposit when he moved apartments, $800. Brianna's credit card debt, $2,300. Dad's dental work, $950. Mom and Dad's property tax bill, $4,200. The total came to $22,540 over the past 4 years. None of it repaid. All of it expected. Month 2, something shifted. The grief started transforming into something else. Not anger. I was surprised to find I wasn't even angry. It was more like detachment. Like I was watching my old life from outside my body and finally seeing it clearly. I started building a new life without them. Small things at first. I went to a painting class at the community center and actually enjoyed it instead of rushing through to get home for Sunday dinner. I said yes when my coworker Keisha invited me to her book club. I stayed late at work on a project I cared about instead of leaving early to run errands for Mom. For the first time in my life, my time was mine. My money was mine. My energy was mine. It felt strange. Guilty even. Like I was doing something wrong by not being available to fix their problems. But week by week, the guilt faded. And in its place grew something I barely recognized: peace. My apartment stopped being a way station between their crises. It became mine. I bought plants and actually kept them alive because I wasn't constantly running to their houses. I cooked meals I liked instead of practicing recipes Mom wanted me to make for family gatherings. I read books just for pleasure. I was learning what it felt like to exist for myself instead of in service to them. Month 3 brought unexpected joy. I got promoted at work, something I'd been too distracted to pursue before. My boss, Patricia, called me into her office and told me I'd been doing exceptional work since spring. "You seem different lately," she said. "More focused. More confident." I didn't tell her it was because I'd been excommunicated from my family. That felt too raw, too complicated. Instead, I just thanked her and accepted the promotion. The raise meant I could finally start saving real money. Not emergency money for family crises, but money for me. Travel money. Future money. Freedom money. I went to dinner with Keisha to celebrate, and halfway through my second glass of wine, I told her everything. About the blocking, the years of being the family doormat, the sudden silence. I expected judgment or pity, but Keisha just nodded like she understood completely. "My family did the same thing when I set a boundary they didn't like," she said. 3 years of silence. Then my dad needed a kidney, and suddenly I had 17 missed calls. She took a sip of her wine. "I didn't give him the kidney." "What happened?" I asked. "He found another donor. And I found out I was better off without people who only valued me for what I could provide." She met my eyes. "When they come back, and they will, don't fall for it, Maya. They're not sorry. They just need something." Her words settled into my bones. I knew she was right, but part of me still hoped she was wrong. Month 4, I changed my address officially. Not because I'd moved, but because I didn't want them showing up if they decided I was worth unblocking. I rented a P.O. box and had all my important mail forwarded there. I changed my emergency contact at work from Dad to Keisha. I updated my beneficiaries on my life insurance policy, removing family members who'd blocked me from benefiting from my death. It felt harsh. It felt necessary. Dr. Kim called it protecting your boundaries. I called it preparing for whatever comes next. I also started attending a support group for people who'd gone no contact with toxic family members. Every Thursday night, 8 of us sat in a community center basement and shared our stories. The details differed, but the patterns were identical. Family members who took and took until you had nothing left to give, then blamed you for being empty. One woman, Cassandra, had been blocked for 2 years after refusing to co-sign a loan for her brother. He called me selfish, she said. But the loan was for a boat he couldn't afford. And somehow I was the bad guy for not wanting to destroy my credit for his toy. Another man, Terrence, had been cut off after missing his sister's wedding because he had surgery scheduled. I had cancer, he said quietly. And she told everyone I skipped her wedding because I was jealous. My whole family believed her. These weren't my people by choice, but they understood me in ways no one else could. They'd all been scapegoats. They'd all been erased. And they'd all survived it. Month 5, I started feeling something I hadn't expected. Genuine happiness. Not despite my family's absence, but because of it. My stress levels dropped. My sleep improved. I stopped getting stress headaches every Sunday dreading family dinner. My bank account actually grew instead of constantly being drained for someone else's emergency. I took a weekend trip to the mountains, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for, because weekends meant family obligations. I sat on a cabin porch watching the sunrise, drinking coffee that wasn't rushed, and thought, this is what life could have been all along. No guilt trips. No last-minute demands. No being told I was selfish for having boundaries. Just peace. I posted a photo of the mountain view on my Instagram, the one account they'd never followed, so they couldn't see I was thriving. The caption, found out what it feels like to breathe. Keisha commented with a heart emoji. My book club friends left encouraging messages. People I'd met since the blocking filled my comment section with love. My family wasn't there, and I didn't miss them. That realization should have hurt, but instead it felt like freedom. I'd spent 28 years trying to earn love from people who only valued what I could do for them. Now I was surrounded by people who valued who I was. The difference was staggering. Month 6, I did something I'd fantasized about for years. I signed up for the pottery class at the Arts Center. Mom had always dismissed my interest in art as impractical and a waste of time. Every time I'd mentioned wanting to try pottery or painting or anything creative, she'd found a way to redirect me toward useful skills, like being available to babysit Brianna's kids or help Kyle move apartments for the 3rd time in 2 years. My first pottery class was a disaster in the best way. My bowl collapsed into a lump. My vase looked like a drunk mushroom. The instructor, an older woman named Louise, just laughed and said, "That's how it goes. Try again." No judgment. No disappointment. Just encouragement. I tried again. And again. By the end of the month, I'd made a wonky mug that held liquid and only leaked a little. I kept it on my desk at work, a reminder that failure didn't mean I was worthless. It just meant I was learning. That mug represented everything my family never understood about me. I didn't need to be perfect. I didn't need to have all the answers. I didn't need to sacrifice myself to be worthy of love. I just needed to be allowed to exist, flaws and all. For the first time in my life, I was allowing myself that grace. Month 7 arrived quietly. By then, I'd stopped checking if I'd been unblocked. Stopped hoping for an apology text. Stopped wondering if Mom would call on my birthday. I knew she wouldn't. My birthday had come and gone in month 4 without a word from any of them. Keisha had thrown me a small party with my book club friends, and it had been perfect. I'd built a life I actually liked. A job I was good at. Friends who showed up. Hobbies that fed my soul instead of draining it. An apartment that felt like sanctuary instead of a place to recover from family drama. I'd learned to cook meals just for myself, not practice runs for their approval. I discovered I liked hiking. I'd finished 3 books in my to-read pile. I'd started journaling, filling pages with thoughts I'd never felt safe sharing with. The girl who'd been blocked 7 months ago wouldn't recognize me now. She'd been anxious, depleted, constantly on edge waiting for the next crisis she'd have to solve. The woman I was becoming knew what peace felt like, which made the text message that arrived at 11:47 p.m. so jarring. Mom's name on my screen. After 7 months of silence. After 7 months of being dead to them. "Maya, we need to talk about money. It's urgent. Call me tomorrow." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened my laptop and pulled up the folder labeled evidence. I had a feeling I was going to need it. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through possibilities. What emergency could possibly be urgent enough to break 7 months of silence? What crisis had finally made me valuable again? Part of me, the old Maya, the one conditioned to jump at their every need, wanted to call immediately, to find out what was wrong, to offer help before they even asked. That impulse was hardwired so deeply that resisting it made my chest ache. But the new Maya, the one who'd spent 7 months in therapy learning about boundaries and self-worth, knew better. Whatever this was, it wasn't about reconciliation. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even an explanation for the blocking. It was a transaction, and they were coming to collect. I got up at 6 a.m., made coffee in my wonky pottery mug, and opened my laptop. I spent 2 hours reviewing every screenshot, every financial record, every documented attempt to reach out that had been ignored. By the time I was done, I had a complete picture of exactly who these people were and what they'd done. They'd thrown me away when I stopped being useful. Now they needed me to be useful again. The question wasn't whether I'd help. The question was what I'd do instead. I opened a new document and started typing. Not a response to Mom's text, that would come later. But a plan. A thorough, methodical plan for exactly how this was going to play out. If they wanted to treat me like an ATM, I'd show them what happens when the ATM closes its account. At 10 a.m., I texted back. Not immediately. I'd learned that looking too eager only reinforced their belief that I'd always be available. My message was simple. I'm at work. What's this about? The reply came within 30 seconds. She'd been waiting. Your father and I need help with some expenses. Kyle's wedding is costing more than expected, and we've had some unexpected bills. We need $8,000. Can you send it by Friday? I read the message 3 times, each read making my jaw tighten a little more. $8,000. By Friday. No, how have you been? No acknowledgement of 7 months of silence. No apology for blocking me. Not even a please. Just need. Just expectation. Just the assumption that I'd comply because I always had before. I took a screenshot, more evidence for the folder, and set my phone down. My hands were shaking, but not from fear or anxiety. From something else. Something that felt like power. At lunch, I called Dr. Kim. She had an opening at 4 p.m., and I took it. I needed to make sure I was thinking clearly, that I wasn't about to do something out of spite or anger. Whatever I did next had to be intentional, measured, and absolutely unshakable. Tell me what you're feeling, Dr. Kim said when I settled into her office couch. Calm, I said, surprising myself. For the first time since this whole thing started, I feel absolutely calm. And what do you want to do? I want them to understand what they did. Not through words, they won't hear words. Through consequences. Dr. Kim nodded slowly. And you're sure about this? Once you set this boundary, it's going to be permanent. They won't forgive you for it. I thought about the past 7 months. About the crying. About the rebuilding. About discovering who I was without their constant demands and criticism. About the peace I'd found in their absence. I don't need their forgiveness, I said. I need my freedom. Then let's talk about how to protect yourself while you do this. We spent the next hour planning. Not revenge. Dr. Kim was clear that this couldn't be about revenge. But consequences. Boundaries. And making sure I was safe from whatever explosion was about to come. That evening, I drafted my response. I wrote 17 versions before I found the right words. Most were too angry, some too apologetic, a few too lengthy. The final version was 3 sentences. Calm. Clear. Unshakable. But I didn't send it yet. There was something I needed to do first. I pulled up my banking app and looked at the savings account I'd been building for 7 months. The account that existed because I wasn't constantly transferring money to fix their problems. The account that represented my future, my freedom, my choice. Then I opened my financial records folder and highlighted every transaction I'd ever made on their behalf. Every dollar I'd sent when they called it an emergency. Every bill I'd paid when they claimed they couldn't. The total glowed on my screen. $22,540. I'd never asked for repayment. Never even hinted that I expected it back. Money was just something you gave to family, right? That's what they'd always taught me. Family helps family. Don't be selfish. We're blood. But blood runs both ways. And they decided 7 months ago that our blood wasn't enough to warrant basic human decency. I created a spreadsheet. Date. Amount. What it was for. Whether they'd ever said thank you. Whether they'd ever acknowledged it later. The document was thorough, detailed, and undeniable. Then I saved it with a simple title. The Real Debt. Friday morning came, their deadline for the $8,000 they'd demanded. I woke up feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. I knew what I was about to do would burn the bridge completely. There would be no coming back from this. No future reconciliation. No chance at a healed relationship. And I was okay with that. More than okay. I was ready. I made myself a real breakfast, something I'd gotten into the habit of doing since the blocking. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit. I ate slowly, drinking coffee from my crooked pottery mug, watching the morning light filter through my apartment windows. My apartment. My space. My life. At 9 a.m., I opened my laptop and logged into a secure payment system. Not my regular bank transfer, something with tracking, with documentation, with proof of delivery. Then I typed in Mom's email address and prepared to send what I'd carefully prepared over the past week. But it wasn't $8,000. It wasn't money at all. I attached the spreadsheet titled The Real Debt. I attached screenshots of every block number notification. I attached the unanswered messages I'd sent during month 1. I attached the email to Dad where I'd begged to know what I'd done wrong. And I attached an invoice. A real invoice, professionally formatted, itemizing every dollar I'd ever sent them. With a note at the bottom. Payment due upon receipt. Since we're apparently treating family relationships as financial transactions now, here's the balance. The total, $22,540. Plus 7 months of emotional damages I'd quantified as $1,000 per month for the therapy I'd needed to recover from their abuse. Final amount owed to me, $29,540. My finger hovered over the send button for exactly 3 seconds. Then I pressed it. The explosion came faster than I expected. My phone started ringing at 9:14 a.m. Mom. I didn't answer. Then Dad. Then Kyle. Then Brianna. Then Mom again. By 9:30, I had 23 missed calls and a string of text messages that devolved from confusion to anger to threats. Mom, what the hell is this? Dad, you can't be serious with this bill. Kyle, you're actually insane. Delete this immediately. Brianna, this is so embarrassing. You're trying to ruin our family over money. I turned my phone on Do Not Disturb and went to work. Let them spiral. Let them panic. Let them feel the same confusion and abandonment I'd felt when they blocked me without explanation. By lunch, my personal email had 17 messages. I read them all. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement of what they'd done to me. Just outrage that I dared to ask for accountability. Just shock that the family doormat had finally stood up. The most telling message came from Kyle. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? We gave you a family. We included you. And this is the thanks we get. I almost laughed. Everything they'd done for me? Like what? Blocking me for 7 months? Using me as an emotional punching bag? Draining my savings for their wants while calling my needs selfish? I replied to that one. Just one line. You didn't give me a family. You gave me an unpaid job I've been fired from. Good luck finding a replacement. Then I blocked him. And Dad. And Brianna. And finally, Mom. The symmetry felt perfect. If you've ever had to cut off family members who treated you like a resource instead of a person, you're not alone. It's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, but sometimes it's the healthiest choice you can make for yourself. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to ask you something. Tell me where you're listening from. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you're finding value in this story, if it's resonating with your own experience, please subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. Your support helps us keep creating content that speaks to real experiences. Now back to what happened after I blocked them all. The weekend was blissfully quiet. No calls. No messages. No emergencies that only I could solve. I went hiking with Keisha, attended my pottery class, finished a book I'd been reading. My phone stayed silent, and for the first time in 7 months, that silence felt like victory instead of abandonment. Monday morning brought the next phase. A certified letter arrived at my P.O. box. From a lawyer. My family had actually hired a lawyer to send me a cease and desist letter, demanding I retract my fraudulent invoice and cease harassing them. The letter was 3 pages of legal language that boiled down to, how dare you? Pay us what we demanded. Stop asking for accountability. Go back to being our doormat. I took the letter to my own lawyer, something I'd set up the previous week in preparation for exactly this scenario. Her name was Attorney Nicole Cross, and she'd come highly recommended by Dr. Kim for family law situations. This is nothing, Nicole said, scanning the letter. Empty threats. They're hoping to intimidate you into compliance. Can they actually sue me for that invoice? For sending a document outlining money you actually loaned them? No. They'd have to prove it caused them damages. If anything, you have a stronger case for small claims court if you wanted to pursue collection. She looked up at me. Do you want to pursue collection? I thought about it. Did I actually want the money back? Or did I want something else? No, I said. I don't want their money. I want them to leave me alone. Then let me draft a response to this cease and desist. We'll make it clear that you're not seeking conflict, but you also won't be intimidated. And we'll include a formal no-contact request, legally documented proof that they're not welcome to contact you further. How much will this cost? I asked, already mentally calculating my budget. For you? First consultation free, response letter $300. Consider it my contribution to helping someone escape family dysfunction. She smiled. I was a scapegoat too. I know exactly what you're dealing with. I could have hugged her. The lawyer's response went out Wednesday. By Thursday, my family's attorney had sent back a terse acknowledgement that they were withdrawing their previous communication and would be advising their clients to cease contact. Legal speak for, we got caught bluffing and we're backing down. But they weren't done yet. Because people like my family don't give up that easily when they've lost their favorite source of free labor and money. Friday evening, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Mom standing in the hallway, holding a tin of what looked like cookies. Behind her stood Dad, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable. My first instinct, the one trained into me over 28 years, was to open the door. To let them in. To hear them out. To give them one more chance. My second instinct, the one built over 7 months of therapy and self-discovery, was to step away from the door and call Nicole. They're at my door, I said quietly. What do I do? Do not engage. You sent a formal no-contact request through your attorney. They're violating it. Do you have a camera? My phone. Start recording video through your peephole. Just audio is fine if you can't get video. Document everything they say. Don't open the door. Don't speak to them. Let them prove they can't respect boundaries. I did exactly that. Started my phone's voice recorder and set it near the door. Mom knocked again, harder this time. Maya, I know you're home. Your car is in the lot. We just want to talk. Please, sweetheart, open the door. Sweetheart. She hadn't called me that in years. We brought your favorite cookies, Dad added. The ones with the chocolate chips. We just want 5 minutes to explain. Silence from my side. My heart was pounding, but I kept my hand off the doorknob. Maya, this is ridiculous. Mom's voice shifted, losing the sweet tone. We're your parents. You can't just ignore us forever. We need to sort out this misunderstanding, Dad said. This lawyer business is getting out of hand. Misunderstanding. Of course that's what they'd call it. 3 more minutes of knocking. Then Mom's voice dropped low, probably thinking I couldn't hear. This is what we get for helping her all those years. Ungrateful doesn't even begin to cover it. The recording captured every word. That night, I sent the recording to Nicole. She sent back 3 words. This is gold. What they just did constitutes harassment after a formal no-contact request, she explained in a follow-up call. We can file for a restraining order if you want. Or we can send another letter, more strongly worded, making it clear that future contact will be treated as legal harassment. The letter, I said. I don't want a restraining order if I don't need one. But I need them to understand I'm serious. Consider it done. The letter went out Monday morning. This one didn't pull punches. It outlined the no-contact request, documented the violation, included timestamps from my recording, and made it explicitly clear that any future contact, through any medium, through any third party, would result in immediate legal action including but not limited to restraining orders and harassment charges. Within the legal language was a simple truth: leave Maya alone or face real consequences. The silence that followed was absolute. No calls. No messages. No surprise visits. They'd finally understood that I wasn't bluffing, wasn't going to cave, wasn't going to go back to being the family doormat they could use and discard at will. But I'd learned enough about toxic family dynamics to know this wasn't over. People who've spent years controlling you don't give up just because you set a boundary. They wait. They regroup. They find a new angle. I wasn't wrong. 2 weeks later, the new attack came from an unexpected direction. My work email, the one I'd never given them, received a message from a concerned family friend. The message claimed I was having a mental health crisis, that I'd been diagnosed with a personality disorder, that I was making wild accusations against my loving family who were desperately worried about me. The email asked my employer to contact my family so they could stage an intervention. I felt ice run through my veins. They were trying to sabotage my job, the promotion I'd earned, the career I'd built, the independence that made it possible for me to escape them. I forwarded the email immediately to both Nicole and HR. My HR director, a sharp-eyed woman named Carol, called me into her office within an hour. "I want you to know we don't respond to these kinds of emails without investigation," she said firmly. "And from what I've seen of your work, you're one of our most stable and productive employees. But I need to ask, is there something going on that could affect your work?" I took a breath and told her the truth. Not every detail, but enough. Family dysfunction. 7 months of no contact. A recent attempt to use me for money that I'd declined. Escalating harassment that had required a lawyer. "They're trying to make me look unstable, so I'll lose my job and have to come back to them for help," I said. "It's a control tactic." Carol nodded slowly. "I've seen this before. My sister went through something similar with her in-laws." She made a note in my file. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm documenting this conversation. Any future emails about you will be forwarded to you immediately and will not be acted upon. And if this escalates further, our corporate attorneys can send their own cease and desist. You're a valued employee, Maya. We protect our people." I almost cried from relief. The work email incident told me something important. They were escalating. The money demand had failed. The lawyer intimidation had failed. The surprise visit had failed. Now they were going after my livelihood, which meant they'd keep going. Keep finding new ways to hurt me. Keep trying to force me back into the role they'd assigned me. Unless I gave them something they couldn't argue with. Something so definitive that even their denial couldn't twist it. I spent that evening going through every single piece of documentation I had. 7 months of records. Years of financial transactions. Screenshots of messages. Voice recordings. Lawyer letters. The work email. I compiled it all into a single, comprehensive document that told the complete story. Then I did something I'd been avoiding because it felt too permanent. I wrote a detailed account of my childhood. Every instance of being blamed for things I didn't do. Every time my achievements were dismissed while my siblings were celebrated. Every birthday they forgot. Every graduation they missed. Every time I'd been the emotional support for their problems while mine were called overdramatic. It took 3 days to write. 27 pages of single-spaced memories I'd spent years trying to minimize. Reading it back made me cry, not from sadness, but from validation. This had happened. All of it. I wasn't crazy or ungrateful or difficult. I was someone who'd been systematically mistreated and had finally found the courage to name it. I saved the document as the full truth and added it to my evidence folder. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I decided to send the document to every single family member who'd ever called me selfish for setting boundaries. Not just Mom, Dad, Kyle, and Brianna, but aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, every person who'd heard their version of events and sided with them without ever asking for mine. Nicole advised against it. "You'll be opening yourself up to more conflict," she warned. "More people who might attack you or try to change your mind." "I know," I said. "But I'm tired of letting them control the narrative. I'm tired of being the villain in a story they're telling about me. Even if no one believes me, even if they all side with them, at least the truth will be out there. Then let me look over it first. Make sure you're not saying anything that could be used against you legally." She reviewed it, suggested a few small changes to protect myself, then gave me the green light. I sent it on a Sunday evening, their family dinner night, the one I used to attend religiously. I imagined them all gathering around Mom's table, passing dishes, laughing, not missing me at all. And then, one by one, their phones buzzing with an email from me. Subject line: "Since you asked why I've been distant." I didn't wait for responses. I'd said what I needed to say. Whether they read it, believed it, or dismissed it wasn't my responsibility anymore. I made myself dinner, watched a movie, and went to bed feeling lighter than I had in months. The responses started coming in around 10 p.m. and continued for 3 days. They ranged from supportive to hostile to confused. My Aunt Shelley, Mom's sister, sent a 2-word response. "I believe you." My cousin Tyler sent 3 paragraphs about how I was tearing the family apart over perceived slights. My grandmother didn't respond at all, which hurt more than I expected. But there were surprises too. My Uncle James, Dad's brother, called me directly. "I always wondered about how they treated you," he said. "But family politics, you know? You don't interfere. After reading your email, though, I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner." "It's okay," I said, and meant it. "I'm not looking for people to choose sides. I just needed the truth to be out there. For what it's worth, you're handling this with more grace than they deserve." That phone call made the 3 days of hostile messages worth it. But the most important response came from someone I didn't expect, Brianna. My younger sister. The one who'd called me jealous. The one who'd supported the blocking. Her email was 5 sentences. "I read what you wrote. Some of it I remember differently. But some of it I can't deny. I don't know what to do with this information. Please don't respond to this email. I need time to think." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even agreement. But it was the first crack in their united front. The first acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, their version of events wasn't the whole truth. I didn't respond. I gave her the space she asked for. And I hoped that someday she'd find the courage to question the family narrative more deeply. 3 months passed. The longest stretch of peace I'd had since the initial blocking. No contact from them. No lawyers. No surprise visits. No emails trying to sabotage my job. Just silence. I kept building my life. Promoted again at work. Took a trip to the coast with Keisha. Finally made a pottery bowl that didn't collapse. Started dating someone I met at book club. Nothing serious, just nice dinners and easy conversation with someone who didn't come with decades of family trauma. Dr. Kim and I started spacing out our sessions. Once a week became twice a month, became once a month. "You're doing the work," she said during one session. "You're building the life you deserve. I'm proud of you." I still have moments where I want to call them, I admitted. Where I see something and think Mom would like this or Dad would have advice about that. That's normal. You're grieving the family you wish you had, not the one you actually had. That grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. She was right. The grief came in waves, less often now, but still sharp when it hit. I was learning to sit with it instead of running from it. To feel it without letting it convince me to go back. I was learning that love wasn't supposed to hurt this much. That family wasn't supposed to feel like a job you could be fired from. That I deserved relationships built on mutual respect instead of one-sided service. I was learning to be okay with being the villain in their story if it meant being the hero in my own. Then, 10 months after that initial text message asking for $8,000, I got a notification that stopped me cold. A payment had been deposited into my account. From Kyle. With a memo that read, "Partial payment. Wedding was canceled. Had some money freed up." The amount, $5,000. I stared at my phone screen, my mind racing. Kyle. The golden child. The one who'd called me selfish. The one whose wedding I'd supposedly ruined by not contributing. His wedding was canceled. I didn't feel the satisfaction I'd expected. Just a hollow kind of sadness. Because this payment wasn't an apology. It was likely another manipulation. Give her some money, soften her up, reel her back in when we need her again. But there was something else in my email inbox. A message from Kyle himself. No subject line. Just text. "Brianna told me she read your email. I read it too. I don't agree with everything you said, but some of it I can't ignore anymore. The wedding fell apart because Stephanie saw how Mom treated everyone like props in her life, including me. She didn't want to marry into that. I'm not ready to admit you were right about everything, but I'm starting to understand why you left. This isn't an apology. I don't know if I'll ever get there. But take the money. You earned it by being the only one who ever held this family together." I read it 3 times. Then I called Nicole. "What do I do with this?" I asked. "What do you want to do with it?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to send it back. Prove I never wanted their money. Part of me thinks keeping it is justice. And part of me is just tired." "Then sit with it," she suggested. "Don't make any decisions right now. Let yourself feel whatever you're feeling. There's no rush." So I sat with it. With the money. With Kyle's words. With the strange, complicated mix of vindication and sadness and relief. And I realized something. I didn't need to decide right now. I didn't need to respond immediately. I didn't need to perform any particular reaction for anyone's benefit. For the first time in my life, I could just be. With my complicated feelings. With my messy history. With my uncertain future. And that was enough. I kept the money. Not because I needed it, but because I'd earned it. Not through the invoice I'd sent, That was always symbolic. But through 28 years of being their emotional support, their financial backup, their scapegoat. Through carrying weight that was never mine to carry. The $5,000 went into my savings account. The one I'd been building for a year. The one that represented freedom instead of emergency funds for their crises. I didn't respond to Kyle's email. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because response implied conversation, and conversation implied relationship, and I wasn't ready to risk the peace I'd built. But I did save his email in a folder marked maybe someday. Because maybe someday I'd be ready to have a relationship with a brother who'd done the work to understand what he'd participated in. Maybe someday he'd give me a real apology. Maybe someday he'd have earned his way back into my life. Or maybe not. And I was okay with that too. What mattered was that the choice was mine now. Not theirs. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea in my wonky pottery mug, watching the city lights through the window. My phone was on silent. My door was locked. My life was mine. I thought about the Maya from a year ago. The one who'd been blocked without explanation. The one who'd cried herself to sleep wondering what she'd done wrong. The one who'd believed she was the problem because everyone had always told her she was. She'd survived. More than that, she'd built something better from the ruins they'd left behind. I'd learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only love what you can give them. I'd learned that family is supposed to be a source of support, not a debt you can never repay. I'd learned that peace is worth protecting, even when protection looks like goodbye. 3 years after that first text asking for money, I rented a small pottery studio. The space I'd always dreamed of but never had time or money for when I was constantly fixing their problems. My hands were steady as I shaped clay on the wheel. My mind was quiet. The bowls and mugs taking shape under my fingers were actually round now, properly balanced, beautiful in their simplicity. This was the life I'd built from the ashes of being blocked. From the pain of being thrown away. From the courage it took to stay away even when it hurt. Xavier, the man from book club who'd become so much more, stopped by with coffee. We'd been together 2 years now, and he still looked at me like I was someone worth choosing every day. "Ready for dinner tonight?" he asked. "Perfect. See you at 7. Simple. Easy. Uncomplicated. The way love should be." I finished the mug I was working on, set it aside to dry, and cleaned up my workspace. As I locked the studio door and walked to my car, I felt something I'd spent most of my life chasing: contentment. Not just happiness, though I had that too, but contentment. The deep, quiet knowledge that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. That I'd made the right choice, even when it was the hardest choice. That I'd saved myself when no one else was coming. Some doors don't stay closed because of anger. They stay closed because I finally learned that protecting my peace meant walking away from people who only valued my presence when they needed something. I didn't lose a family. I lost people who were never going to choose me unless choosing me served them. And the silence after that door closed? It wasn't empty. It was where I finally heard my own voice. Where I finally learned that I was worth more than what I could provide. Where I discovered that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. I sent them exactly what they deserved, the truth. And I kept exactly what I deserved, my freedom. My name is Maya Turner. This was my story. And if you're living a version of it right now, I need you to hear this. You're not selfish for having boundaries. You're not cruel for protecting yourself. You're not ungrateful for expecting basic respect. And you're not alone. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you need. Sometimes walking away is the only way to find yourself. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so full of peace that they become irrelevant to your happiness. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more stories of survival, strength, and finding yourself on the other side of trauma. And remember, you deserve relationships that don't feel like unpaid jobs. You deserve love that doesn't come with impossible conditions. You deserve peace. Tell me where you're listening from, and share your story in the comments if you feel safe to do so. We're building a community of people who chose themselves, and you're part of that now. Take care of yourself. You're worth it.